Let's find out more about the South China Sea disputes and ways to resolve the conflict. Joining us from Beijing is Jia Xiudong. He's a senior research fellow at the China Institute of International Studies. Great to see you again.
Hi, Ronald.
Give us a little more insight. Why exactly is the U.S. and China butting heads over the future of the South China Sea?
Well, both countries are trying to maintain their national interests in regard to the South China Sea issue. For the U.S., actually, is trying to maintain its dominant role in the maritime domain and finding grounds for its rebalancing strategy towards Asia. However, for China, it's kind of sovereignty issue. It is trying to maintain its sovereignty over the islands in the South China Sea, which has enjoyed for centuries. And also, it would like to develop friendly relations with Southeast Asian nations and finding ways to maintain peace and stability in the region, in the South China Sea region. So for the United States, actually, it's in the eyes of the Chinese people, the U.S. is not a party to the disputes over the sovereignty in the South China Sea and should stay neutral. So if the U.S. plays a constructive role, that's good for both countries and also for countries in the region. Any moves that may complicate the situation may lead to a dangerous kind of spiral of tensions in the area, and which will not be in the interest of any countries.
So China says the solution to all of this is not a military one. Why are we seeing these landing strips in the South China Sea?
Right. China always calls for a dialogue and peaceful solution to the disputes in the South China Sea and try to diffuse tensions. For example, ever since several decades ago, China has called for sharing the differences over the sovereignty issue, because sovereignty issue is a very hard one. You cannot solve it overnight. It takes time. So countries in the region should make sure that their differences should not stand away in the cooperation. So China has called for joint development over, for example, in the South China Sea, over resources and navigation and scientific research, so on and so forth, and set up actual fund for maritime cooperation in the South China Sea. And because China believes that the dialogue and diplomatic means will be sustainable, and a military one will not be.
So you think through research, scientific research, they're going to be able to solve who actually has the rights to this area?
Actually, in the 1990s, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines agreed to joint seismic research, and that was a multi-year program. However, the program did not last because of the Philippines and the Vietnam. They believe that they did not accept, the new administration later on did not accept the joint development. Actually, many countries support this idea of joint development, including scientific research and rescue research, and actually, the use of the South China Sea for economic purposes. And so through cooperation, countries can build up actually trust, and they should not, so they don't rely on military means or expanding of their presence to deal with the issue.
So Jia Xiudong, do you think an international court will eventually weigh in on this?
No, of course not, because the United Nations law of the sea provides that actually the sovereignty issue should be dealt with through other international law. Actually, the UNCLOS does not deal with the sovereignty issue. So an international court cannot deal with this one. And also China, for its principle, does not accept the rule of international courts. It seeks political and diplomatic means by the claimants, because China believes that the involvement of the international court may only complicate the situation. And before the countries can, solve their differences finally, of course that takes time. China believes that all countries should shelve their differences, so find cooperative ways to avoid any conflicts or even the surge of tensions in the South China Sea. Actually,
Jia Xiudong,
that's what China and the ASEAN countries have been doing over the decades.
Jia Xiudong, we appreciate your time joining us live in Beijing.